panel that you can see, we have from investment side, Mr. Pallav Kumar. We have Vishal Sood with us. He is a founder and also an investor. तो वो दोनों story सुनेंगे. And then we have a startup Inderveer Singh, जो कि बहुत interesting segment में है EVs में. So पहले हम startup से ही शुरू करते हैं. So my question to you, Inderveer, if you can have, yeah. पंजाब एंजल नेटवर्क है तो इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात होगी, और जब इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात होगी तो आपने चंडीगढ़ में रह के, पंजाब के इकोसिस्टम में रह के, जहां लोग बोलते हैं यार इन्वेस्टमेंट लेनी बहुत मुश्किल है, हमें तो कहीं और जाना पड़ेगा, आपने $28 मिलियन वो भी सीड राउंड में रेज करे, which is a big thing, right? $28 मिलियन सीड 1 मिलियन 2 मिलियन 10 मिलियन सुना होगा आपने, 28 मिलियन इन्होंने करे, वो भी एक ट्रेडिशनल इंडस्ट्री में नहीं, ईवीज में, जो कि अभी भी इंडिया में भी अगर ईवीज को देखो, that's a coming up industry, it's a nurturing and maturing industry right now. So if you can just take us through the story for entrepreneurs who are now building their companies, उससे वो takeaways लेके कि हम कैसे ऐसे पैसे रेज कर सकते हैं.
Thanks. So yeah, at EVH we are making a very non-conventional product. It's a 4-wheel commercial vehicle, not even a car or a scooter or a 3-wheeler, of course. It's a commercial vehicle that we are making. And raising funds in turbulent times, we managed to raise it during the peak of the boom. But I think for a startup like us, it's always turbulent times. No precedence of a commercial vehicle EV being established in the world. And sitting in some corner of India which is not in the spotlight, so called. So it was turbulent times then also for us. So there are a couple of things which I went through the process and understood was what we did right and what we did wrong, of course. The first thing was the fact that we had a MVP in place before we started our fundraise process. So we knew who our target customer was, we knew what is the market potential, we knew where we are fitting into, what's our niche, and we had a MOU signed. It was not a binding agreement at that point of time, but a MOU signed in by 2 or 3 of the largest consumers in the world. Amazon was one of them, and few other e-retailers. So, and once we had locked that in is when we moved on to look at raising funds. So the timing of your fundraise is critical, and also how prepared you are. There used to be a saying back in the day when we were raising funds, there were a lot of two-wheelers being incubated at that point of time, or they were also raising their seed funds. People JPEG पे पैसा उठा रहे हैं for a EV. That was a very sort of a populist kind of a saying. But most of them are surviving or hardly surviving today. So the most important thing is to have a MVP in place. Second is to have a solid team who knows the technology. As a founder, if you know the technology, that's an added bonus, right? Unless you can sort of have a hold over the technology, nobody would risk putting in a money for a new product, hardly tried before. So how strong is your team that becomes a very important challenge. So that was there, and then to create a compelling narrative around what you are building. There is nothing in the past to show precedence. Investors generally ask us, okay, India mein you are the first one, Europe mein, US mein, what was the story of a similar startup, right? And we didn't have anything to show. In fact, we were the first electric delivery van in the world to be homologated in 2020.
Wow.
Right. That's what it took to get a $28 million seed round, first thing. And Chandigarh has not got its share of limelight. There are great founders. The story of India's startup ecosystem has Chandigarh written all over it, or Punjab. Which were the few famous star startups so far, or earlier in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Flipkart has a Chandigarh story. Ola has a Ludhiana story. Right. So it just happened so that they migrated to Bangalore, I guess. But there's a lot of potential I see. there's a lot of scope. I mean, with the sheer number of engineering colleges you see around Chandigarh itself. So there is no dearth of talent and ideas in this city or this state. And our history also has been to work in adverse conditions, which is the foremost thing to start a startup, right? You need to be able to face adverse conditions, look forward at the unknown. So these are the few things I went through and I realized, we had to go through. And when we raised that $28 million, there was sort of a report published that financial year closing, the top few states raising funds or cities, I think. And, Chandigarh was number 6 or 5, and they had raised $30 million. So there is definitely a dearth of capital, and it will only start when, Silicon Valley became the valley because the residents of the valley started supporting valley projects. So a lot more of investments would be needed locally to boost this ecosystem till the giants come in over here. So yeah, that was the story.
Guys, can we have a round of applause for him now? और ना देखो, मैं बड़ी प्रैक्टिकल सी बात आपको बताता हूँ. इनसे मैं आज पहली बार ही मिल रहा हूँ, ठीक है? लेकिन इन फाउंडर से मिलने से पहले मैंने इनका प्रोडक्ट चलता हुआ देख लिया था. So that tells you about something कि कुछ चल रहा होगा तभी इतना सारा वहाँ दिख रहा है. So with that, I would come to you, sir. आप तो फाउंडर भी हो, आप इन्वेस्टर भी हो. तो और इन्होंने ना एक कंपनी है प्लूटो, उसमें भी इन्वेस्ट करा है. एंड ही हैज आल्सो रेज्ड $1 million, मिस्टर विशाल सूद. तो दोनों तरफ से आप हमें अपनी स्टोरी बताओ कि पहले तो जब खुद $1 million रेज करा था तो वो कैसी जर्नी रही, और क्या आज अगर उससे बड़ा राउंड आप रेज करने जाओगे तो हाउ आर थिंग्स गोइंग टू बी फॉर यू?
So, thanks first of all for inviting me to this event. It's a wonderful initiative. So, coming to the topic first, turbulent times, as Sir said that your time of turbulence starts when the idea of starting a startup comes to your head. When your legs shake, when you have to get up and offer your resignation, when you think about it. So these are turbulent times. And I will come to my journey also. So I had one doubt about this topic. I should have asked earlier, but I thought I will ask this question in front of everyone. So when you say turbulent times, you mean the current scenario of investment where since last year the funding has decreased tremendously?
Yeah, the funding.
Right. Now again, this has to be taken. This is a very motherhood or global statement that it tracks in the kind of data that is put. Like one thing just as was mentioned, that Chandigarh raised $30 million and came 6th, and 28 million was for one company. So sometimes data does not reflect what is actually happening. And these days, how economic activity impacts everything. It differs at the pin code level. So what is happening over here, what is happening with startups at the early stage could be very different. Now, most of this, although we are in edtech space, most of this decrease in funding this year, like there was a 70% decrease in August to August funding in this year. It is mainly because some big startups who were hoping they will raise few $100 million didn't happen. So India's overall startup ecosystem is also not that big. So it is, there are some very big islands of excellence, I would say, in terms of the mass. The whole mass of funding is concentrated with few companies. So for rest of the companies at our level, it is pretty much the same. So there is nothing to worry about. And these new satellite towns like Chandigarh and new Punjab Angel Network, these kind of initiatives are coming up very fast. So one way so that it is not a funding winter, one thing that could be done is, if you want to increase funding in Punjab side, is make funding glamorous. I think that is one job that needs to be done. We Punjabis want things to be a bit glamorous. Of course, risk assessment and everything has to be done. And coming to our story of funding, we were very fortunate. The investors wanted to invest with us. They wanted to collaborate. They wanted to hire me. So I said that I'm not looking for a job. I had recently resigned. So they said that in their typical Punjabi style, we will buy out your company and we will make some investment. So it was relatively a very unique and easy thing. We were very fortunate that way. And if we have to raise now, we will go with same investors. In fact, we are going with them. They in fact have asked that they want to raise their investment. So I don't have any such experience where we went out and made a pitch or anything. So that way I won't be able to offer much help to anyone here. And but when it comes to investment, again that story is also like he was my batchmate from IIM Ahmedabad.
I'm interrupting you because people don't know. This is the biggest reward management platform that he has invested in. So uski ab ye story.
And so he asked me, he gave me a call. I call him Fungus because he used to have this beard, and in campus we used to call him Fungus. And so he said he wanted me to invest, so I thought it's okay, anyway, there was some synergy. What we do, we are into EdTech. We have this alumni management system. We wanted to start privilege cards. Those guys were anyway biggest in reward management system for credit cards. So there was synergy also. You got a chance to help your friends. And I knew that guy was smarter than I am. So anyway, it's always a better idea to give your money to someone who is smarter than you are. Yeah. And so that's how we made our investment. But now
you backed the person, right?
Yeah, we backed it. It's like that. Idea, person, the team, and the kind of sincerity that they have. And so that is my side of the investment. Although now with Sandeep ji, I'm trying to learn the nuances and nuisance of investment. I'm trying to understand both sides, of it. And hopefully, through Punjab Angel Network, we would be able to contribute in some ways. And but in terms of turbulence, I think the data that is published in newspapers, it can only be a negotiation tool by investors. But otherwise, if you look at number of deals happening, it will be almost there or higher. In fact, in ranking, India has moved number 2 in the world investment. It's a tough time is going around the world in the economic scenario. So people are trying to recalibrate how to invest in startups. But when you have such a headspace, especially in a city like Chandigarh or Punjab, then you have a lot of scope to increase, what can happen. So turbulence is, something you have to buy into it, you have to enjoy it. Only then you can face, and when you ask for money, be unapologetic about it. I always tell my team, when you ask for money or when you ask a girl out, be unapologetic. You have a better chance. So, I think that is how we should navigate whatever economy and other things are throwing at us.
Great. And guys, ये ना बिल्कुल फाउंडर से आ रहा है, मतलब बिल्कुल authentic information. In case you want any tips and anything, you can jot down. This is the real story. Theories में कुछ नहीं रखा, ये सीधा straight from the founders जिन्होंने ये सब कर रखा है. Next will come to an investor, right? और आप तो जी पल्लव कुमार जी, हम आपकी कंपनी के साथ बहुत इंटरेक्ट भी करते हैं. Tell me कि जब आप इन्वेस्टमेंट्स कर रहे हो और आजकल का टाइम है, और जब हम फंडिंग विंटर कहते हैं तो हम ये भी देख रहे हैं कि जो हमारी अभी रीसेंट यूनिकॉर्न भी आई है वो इतनी लेट ईयर में आया है ना. तो हाउ डू यू सी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स नाउ हैपनिंग, हाउ डू यू इन्वेस्ट, और चंडीगढ़ के फाउंडर्स को अगर आप बोलना चाहो कि यार दिस इज माय थ्योरी, दिस इज हाउ आई इन्वेस्ट, सो इफ यू कैन जस्ट थ्रो सम लाइट ऑन इट.
First of all, thank you for having me over. And also, I'm really honored to share with 2 really great founders. Vishal and I have been interacting for certain things. We keep interacting, so I know that he's a great guy. And I met him today, and he was just blew me off with the technology that he had to offer. Yeah. So, there are 2 connotations to it. एक जब हम फंडिंग विंटर की बात कर रहे हैं, फंडिंग विंटर फंड्स में नहीं है. Okay. Startups could not raise the level of capital that they had desired. But funds were able to raise more than $31 billion in commitments from their LPs. So there is definitely a lot of dry powder. The issue is deployment. जो आप एक trend देख रहे हैं कि till about last year we exceeded the marks of in numbers that India were able to create 20 unicorns or India were able to move ahead because a lot of large ticket size deals were happening. Numbers like 100 million raise कर लिए, 120 raise कर लिए were very, very frequent in terms of that. Now the trend is just reversed. There's a lot of early stage development. And I'm telling you from our perspective, so we did a lot of large ticket sizes deals. We invested in a drone company about $12 million. We invested about in a fintech giant about $11 million. But now we're also not looking, in recent times, we're looking at smaller deals and syndication of deals. क्योंकि हमें मालूम है कि अगर हम साथ में इन्वेस्ट करेंगे लोगों के जो स्पेस ऑलरेडी हैं, जैसे एंजल नेटवर्क्स हो गए, early stage funds हो गए और early stage funds हो गए, तो it would be good syndication. So there is not कि funding winter. I have personally a problem with funding winter. using the word funding mentor. मतलब मेरा personal वो है because it entirely misrepresents a different India story.
But then there's this, so just to
When I
comment
said
on that.
funding mentor, I said it's not there.
हाँ, it's not there. हाँ, मतलब I will.
But then the theory has changed now.
Yeah, I was just. I'm sorry, closing on there.
Yeah, the theory is now investors are seeing more profitability, road to profit. But in earlier, if you see,
So earlier, see, but that's a good thing, right? Good founders. I'm talking about founder focus. हमारे फंड में खुद भी को यूज टू कॉल अस एज अ वेरी गवर्नेंस ओरिएंटेड फंड और अब वही लाइन मैं हर फंड में देख रहा हूँ जिन फंड्स ने बहुत पहले बहुत ही एब्सर्ड वैल्यूएशन दी थी तो इट्स डेफिनेटली अ गुड थिंग अब मैं आई टू द फाउंडर्स जो कंपनी शुरू कर रहे हैं वो शुरू कर रहे हैं मैं हमेशा एक एडवाइस देता हूँ अपने फाउंडर्स को इवन इफ यू डू नॉट प्लान टू डू एन आईपीओ प्रिपेयर फॉर वन okay because the amount of credibility the amount of compliance the amount of governance the amount of practices SOPs जो वो आपके एंटिटी के अंदर इनिशिएट करेंगे that would help you long term और Zepto is now a unicorn Zepto ने भी अपना साइज बदला Zepto I know those founders really well they were raising $20 million at the end of at the beginning of the year in January February they ended up raising $114 million so these dynamics change कि शुरू होने भी कम अमाउंट से किया था अगर वो उतना अमाउंट से तो यूनिकॉर्न नहीं होते ओके वो बन गए बिकॉज़ उन्होंने लास्ट टिकट साइज अमाउंट रेज किया दे प्रूव्ड योर नंबर्स राइट एंड आई अगेन फंडिंग मेंटर नहीं है अच्छे फाउंडर्स हमेशा फंड रेज कर पाएंगे द ओनली एडवाइस इज टू कंजर्व कैपिटल टू हैव अ प्रॉपर ऑप्टिमाइजेशन ऑफ योर forecast to have great governance issues so that's the simple advice.
Okay, one more question as we are with you. यहाँ ना बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं या इन्वेस्टर्स बनना चाहते हैं ये जर्नी ऑफ एन इन्वेस्टर या पर्क्स या फिर आप कह लो ड्रॉबैक्स ऑफ बीइंग एन इन्वेस्टर थोड़ा सा उस जर्नी पे उस लाइफस्टाइल पे थोड़ा अगर एनलाइटन करो बिकॉज अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल हियर आई वुड नो मतलब मैं फेसेस देख के बताता हूँ वो इन्वेस्टर्स या तो बनना चाह रहे हैं या हैं
So again, मतलब when I was a founder, I used to see कि आगे जाके कितनी अच्छी लाइफ होगी जब इन्वेस्टर बन जाएंगे. अब I wish I could go back to being a founder.
Grass is greener on the other side.
It's not. No, definitely it is. However, the issue is see when you are investing with experts, like when you're investing with AIFs, you're investing with networks, जिनकी expertise है, जो अपना खुद चला सकते हैं, they have a panel, आपने उनको अपना fund दे दिया, they're managing the fund, they'll get you returns. That's a good practice, which India still is slightly literacy में हल्का सा issue है. Because I was just having a discussion outside. अभी किसी ने family office के बारे में बात करी थी. मैंने कहा the family office as a trend in India is probably way behind. We are 20 years behind in the family office investing scene. The networks are catching up. अगर आप खुद अकेले invest करते हैं तो जैसे अभी आप founder तो आप एक company की tension ले रहे हैं, बाकी आप 10 company की tension लेंगे. That's it. और उस पे वो नहीं है.
May I add something to it?
Yeah, please.
I think if you have to be an investor, a startup investor, I think you have to be half hitman and half monk. Right? Right? So you give them targets and then you mind your own business. And like the company that I have invested in, I've never been to their office. Right? They have asked me a couple of times. So sometimes we just meet at Linkuridian and we have a cup of coffee, but I've still not been to their office. But in terms of Hitman, you look at numbers, how quarterly things are progressing. If you have some input, if you have a client lead, wherever you can support them, you do that. But otherwise, leave the have an eagle eye on certain key indicators. But don't be every day go to their office, sit in their office. Don't do that. So I think that works better if you have to. Be an investor also, and if you are trying to be an investor. So if you have that kind of mindset, if you have that kind of risk appetite, then I think it's a good way to support entrepreneurship in the country, good way to contribute towards your nation also.
Okay, so last question, and this is to you, Inderveer. फाउंडर की एस्पिरेशन होती है बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ी होती है ना, एंड देन रीजन की भी हम बात कर रहे हैं, एंड यू हैव ऑलरेडी रेज्ड योर सीड राउंड. Now, probably when you'll be raising your bigger round, what are your aspirations as a founder? What are you targeting, considering the geographies that we work in today and the ecosystem that we have in today?
So I think most of the founders are so enamored by the unicorn tag. That's a common thing. Anybody who wants to start would want to be the next unicorn in India, and then a decacorn. Now a new term has been coined. right? But I think as a founder, we at EVH and especially me, we look at what value we can create to our investor. We have to understand, right? It is somebody who has earned their money. अगर LP का पैसा भी है, VC का पैसा भी है, they also earned it the right way, given their taxes on it, and बड़ा महंगा पैसा है वो, right? It's not, it's free money that is flowing in. There's a tap, RI paisa. So you need to see where you are creating the value. Now I'll give you EVH parlance and some information I'm disclosing. Some is slightly confidential and not put out, but average EV startup globally, right, without having sold a vehicle, most of these SPAC'd out deals who are SPAC mergers, we can discuss later offline, but they were trading at a valuation of $50 billion, $80 billion without selling a car or a truck or two-wheeler or whatever they are selling, right? And there is no justification for this valuation. I'm not from a grade A, B school, but थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ाई की है, so I understand DCF होता है बस, discounted cash flow. You should be in that variable. थोड़ा बहुत premium मिल सकता है आपको. But if you expect कि बस मेरा revenue होगा 1x and I want a 20x premium on that, you'll be really lucky if you get it, or a great storyteller. I mean, that's the only way I justify it to myself. So as a founder, as a team at EVH, our focus is to create value. Deliver the numbers, push out sales, and I think that's the best validation for a startup. And as a founder, there is no end to your greed, right? The idea is to be happy with what you get and see what value you create with that. And that is the mindset, at least we try to create, conserve cash. We have zero marketing spend as of today. Of course, now we are in a different stage, we will add into that. But before we could be ready to sell vehicles, I did not need to market myself. And I've seen a lot of co-founders within the ecosystem I meet around have spent so much money in selling their startup to investors itself that they end up losing focus on their product. Right? So
funding is a full-time job, right? Raising funding.
Yeah, that's a full-time job, but your product or your service or whatever you're doing core to the business has to be a key differentiator. Not your pitch, not your number, whatever you state, right? So, and always ask for a valuation which will give room for your coming in investor to make money out of you. And that's what we focus on.
Thank you so much. So guys, this was the panel for you. We had startup, and then investor. Can we have a huge round of applause for